Hello everyone. So today we'll talk about Android and iOS. First of all, we'll talk about Android. So Android is a mobile operating system developed by Google based on the Linux kernel and designed primarily for touchscreen mobile devices such as smartphones and tablets. The Android's user interface is mainly based on direct manipulation using touch gestures that loosely correspond to real-world actions such as swiping, tapping, pinching to manipulate on-screen objects, along with a virtual keyboard for the text input. In addition to the touchscreen devices, Google has further developed a Android TV for televisions and Android for auto cars, Android Auto for cars, and Android Wear for like wristwatches, smartwatches, and so on, each with a specialized user interface. So, as I mentioned, Android is developed by Google, and the first Android was released in 2007. The first version of Android released was Android 1.0. It was released without a code name, and the first Android version that was released with a code name was Android version 1.5, which is called Cupcake. And they have further developed the Android versions until the current one, which is version 6.0, which is called Marshmallow. And moving on to iOS. So, iOS, formerly known as iPhone OS, is a mobile operating system created by and developed by Apple exclusively for its hardware. So, it's mainly only developed for iPhones, iPad, iPods, and the other Apple devices. So it is the operating system that presently powers many of the company's mobile devices, as I mentioned, the iPhone, iPad, and iPod Touch, and so on. So it is the second most popular mobile operating system at the moment after Android. The first iOS was released in 2007, and back then it wasn't called iOS as I mentioned before. It was called iPhone OS, released for the first iPhone. And the first iOS version was released called iOS 1 for the iPhone 1, as I mentioned before. And it has been further developed until the current version of the iOS, that is iOS 10, which will come out quite soon. And as I mentioned before, it is specifically developed for Apple smart devices. So now we'll move on to the Android versus iOS. So this is the comparison between Android and iOS. On the Android, it is generally used for numerous phone brands such as Samsung, LG, HTC, and other smartphone brands at the moment. On the other hand, iOS is Apple device exclusive, so it is only built for Apple devices. And the Android is more flexible in terms of accessibility. What this means is you get to customize what your Android OS looks like, what your phone looks like on the software side. Whether On the other hand, iOS is limited in terms of accessibility, so you can't really customize what the user interface looks like, what your phone homepage looks like, and etc. And the next one is for the OS updates. For the Android, they are accessible to only some devices. Some devices might not have it. Some devices might have it. And on the other hand, iOS, the updates are accessible to all, most devices that are the latest devices. And moving on, the applications from Google are usually universal. So, for example, Google Mail or something, they are also downloadable on iOS devices, whereas iOS applications are usually exclusive to only iOS devices. And the next ones are comparison between the native applications such as Google Play Store, Google Now, Google Maps, Google Cloud. Those are exclusively to the Android OS. And on the iOS side, we have Apple App Store, Siri, Apple Maps, and iCloud. And here are the pros and cons for each of the operating systems. So for Android, it is massive hardware selection. What this means is that, as I mentioned before, Android has a large number of Android devices that are available at various price points with varying hardware capabilities and screen sizes and features. And the second one is highly customizable for user experience. What this means is that the home screen can be customized with not just app icons but widgets that allow the user to stay connected or informed. Other examples include SwiftKey, which modifies your Android smartphone's keyboard, and apps that emulate older gaming consoles, so like emulators and stuff. Google also has fewer restrictions than Apple on what kinds of apps it allows on its Play Store. Moreover, you can choose to install Android apps from places other than the Google Play Store. So you can find generally you can find APK files that you can download and install on your device. And for iOS, the first one is massive app ecosystem. So this is the distinct advantage for tablet apps, while on smartphones, popular apps are usually available on for both platforms. The second one is deeper integration with Facebook and Twitter. So for iOS, it is easier to post updates and share on social networks using iOS than Android, because of how deeply integrated these platforms are with iOS. And moving on, the third one, iOS only apps like Passbook, FaceTime, and mobile payment apps like Square, available on iOS 3GS, 4, 4S, 5, and so on. Not only not only for limited Android phones. And the next one, interface is locked down. What this means is the limited customization options for home screens. Only rows of app icons are allowed. No third-party apps are pre-installed by the wireless carrier. Users can only install apps from the App Store. So you can't, unlike Android, you can't get apps from the internet. Download the APK file, for example. You can't do that on iOS. And the next one is software upgrades. So Apple offers software upgrades to all devices that have the hardware capable of handling the new software. This means the devices stay current with the software features for at least 2 or 3 years. So that's one of the advantages and kind of the disadvantage of the software upgrades for iOS. And last but not least, better privacy controls. iOS offers better control over the access apps that have to users' private information such as contacts and location. So I think that's all for Android and iOS. Thank you for watching my video.